Alright, so I was sort of inspired by Carol Walker's art. And we talked about in class how the whiteness sort of shapes the blackness, but the whiteness is sort of this negative space, and its presence there is what makes it able to see the blackness, which then led me to think about in Bluest Eye how the way that they're able to see themselves as black is shaped by how they see whiteness and white people, and that's what I'm going to talk about. And I think I'm going to use a little bit of Toni Morrison's essay as well as the Fanon essay to sort of shape that, and yeah.
So I wanted to draw a parallel in the way that language and racism are socially constructed based off of the readings from Saussure and Derrida. Beginning with I have just several thoughts here. Language as a naming system dictates a construction of identities that designates subject and other. I want to take this in the direction of how not only the construction of language is similar to the construction of race, but even in the way that language and race break down to very simple measures of how race is a matter of otherness. And anyway, so I'm going to continue on with my thoughts. The institutionalizing of subject is done through the identification of other. Otherness is the absence of whiteness. In The Bluest Eye, otherness is communicated through an absence of whiteness. There are not a lot of white characters that make an appearance in Bluest Eye, yet it's solely, the whole book is about racism, so it's, I think, apparent throughout the book. Specifically, regarding the instance of Claudia questioning the beauty assigned to blue-eyed, pink-skinned baby dolls and why they are seen as beautiful, she eventually realizes her otherness is as not white, and therefore not beautiful, and therefore not worthy. And I want to just follow through how not only the ways that racism is orchestrated, but how it equates itself to unworthiness and the impact that has in The Bluest Eye.
Okay, so when we were talking about Carol Walker in class and looking at some of her stuff, I started looking around her website a little bit and looking through the themes in her work, and some of them were about narrative or humor or representation of race and stuff, but one that really stuck out to me, and the actual title on her website is History: A Collusion of Fact and Fiction. That really resonated with Morrison's essay for me, because she talks about how, in terms of the white Western literary canon, oh well, if we just throw some black works in there, then that's okay. Then we have attributed that, or we have accounted for that. And Morrison's no, you can't. This is it's an inextricable link between the white literary tradition and black literary tradition, and just the historical tradition in general. And so what we're choosing to omit from that reading of history is just obviously as important as what we're choosing to include. And I think that being said, it kind of draws a really interesting parallel between well, how much more reliable is the objective reading of history that we use in comparison to Carol Walker's artistic, subjective, interpretive reading of history. Is one really more reliable than the other? And I haven't really pinned down a specific passage in The Bluest Eye yet, but I will, and a close reading will be done.
Now, okay, how did you just reinterpret what I said? Do you remember, or do I need to walk it back through?
Okay, so you're saying with the whole signs?
Signs signify, yeah.
Signified and signifier.
Yeah.
It's table, the word is the signifier, right?
Yeah.
And then that signifies.
The table is the signifier. The table, the word table is the signifier. The table itself is the signified.
And then that whole thing is the sign.
Yeah.
So then what you were saying was ugly, the word ugly is the signifier, which like the word table.
Yes.
And then her Picola's identity is what that signifies. That's
Yes.
to signify like the object table. And that whole process is othering.
Yes.
Do you mean, but so from, you just, I'm confused, you mean like from her own, like from the way that she sees herself, from the way other people see her, just like in general, like that's just her existence, like.
Well, ugliness in the way that she hasn't been taught to see anything but that, because that has been the assigned identity based on her skin.
Kind of like we're taught table means table.
Exactly. Like how table means table. Her identity was ugly. I mean, and that was something that was like that kept, I noticed that kept repeating itself in the book, just that word ugliness, which was so strong every time it came up. But I wanted to know your thoughts on this also because, and I don't know if this is clear now, but I think like if this is a sensible model that can be applied to Saussure's concept, then could it also be like said that there is like in this model there is an absence of the subject, but the othering is the presence of the subject. Just as it so it's like the institutionalizing of subject is done through the identification of other.
But I guess the subject would then be sort of like whatever the culture is that, taught us that table means table.
Right. The subject is the construction. Well, the subject isn't the construction. The subject is who is constructing. That's why table is the word we have for table. That's why Picola's identity is ugly. How are you, Tim, is this still kind of not?
Kind of, I'm just like, it's tough because like you're putting like, it fits nice like in Saussure's like,
Yeah.
and it fits nice sign, signified sign, all fits nicely, but like you're putting, I get it, like I see it, and like the more that we're going around, the more it's making sense, but you're putting like othering and like the institutionalizing of the subject, like you're trying to fit that in there. It fits, I think, but it's just taking a second for me to wrap my head around.
Oh yeah. Well, I think same actually. That's why it took me like so long to introduce this idea to begin with, because I was still working it out. But like that, like it's the absence of the subject in it is like, yeah. So like it doesn't like. I think that it makes sense that there's no subject in this concept, because it's not, because it will, I mean, not like specifically, but like it is there. It is there in, saying who is other.
And I guess the othering is like the subject can define what the object is because it's not the subject.
Yes. Subject being white, because the ugliness is considered synonymous with blackness. So not ugly is not black, but and white. Okay, so like, all right, it's just easiest for me to go with the table thing.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so the word table is ugly, and the signified is Picola's identity, which is ugly.
Mm-hmm. I mean, but like, right, so
Yeah.
the signifier is the word table. Signified is Picola's ugly.
Yes. No.
Well, that's the same thing. That's the same thing. Alright. So
Yeah.
table and ugly are the same thing. Pecola and the thing table are the same thing, right? And
Yes.
then the signs together.
Yeah.
Right. And I get that. I get
Yeah.
how that lines up.
Okay.
But what I'm struggling with is like, well, you start talking about subject and object and who's ascribing what to who and where, and that's where you lost me.
Okay. So I was saying like the sign, like the sign is the othering, because like her identity is being socially assigned, and it is one of lesser than. So like.
Okay. So yeah, it's coming in now.
Okay. Cool. Cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's because like the whiteness is the subject that's ascribing like the meaning, right, to this. Okay.
Yes.
So that's because they're dictating what
Yes.
the sign is going to be in its totality. Okay, I get it now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's the othering because like the non-whiteness is the okay. I get it now.
Cool. All right. Yeah. All right. It's like good if I can like bake it kind of. If I can bake it, if you guys can get it, then I can maybe write it and make it make
definitely,
sense.
Yeah, I mean you're already there like with socio anyways, so that should totally fit.
Thank you.
Did you guys have any ideas or any like specific instances from the book or like passages that maybe you remember that stick out in your mind that kind of tie into like the stuff that I'm talking about?
Say sort of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, just because like, obviously like since it's part of the prompt, like it's a major theme in Morrison's novel, like misreading as much as reading, and like how we reflect on our own identity and how other people see us, and like the whole thing with the seeds and like the why they thought they wouldn't grow, but really this is why they didn't grow. And then I was just gonna tie that whole thing into like a comparison of Morrison's reading of like Western American literary history and her essay with like Carol Walker's like survey of history through her work. Because just based on like how Morrison characterizes all of the like the shortcomings and like not just like criticism, but just like what's considered like valuable, or what like how like we even think about literature or like society in general was formed, is just like you're completely missing this whole huge segment of like the black like contribution. You can't just like pick a couple things. So and then like Walker's whole philosophy is like history is a collusion of fact and fiction, so it's like is one really more reliable than the other, which I think ties into like the whole like with Pecola and her sister, like why each of them, like why they thought the seeds weren't growing. And so maybe I can talk about the seeds.
Yeah, I think I could go.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually. So,
Yeah, that
so
would be.
there's that.
I think the seeds would be. Yeah, with the whole identity of like their blackness is shaped behind it, how they view whiteness, which is it sort of stemmed from Carol Walker's art, and
I think it's tight that we both
Yeah,
got
that's
such
cool.
like vast
Yeah.
conclusions. Like there's so much like substance there to
Yeah.
be like picked apart from this connection. Yeah, keep going.
yeah, it was it's just like it was so amazing to see that.
Yeah.
And so they're able to see like how they are able to view themselves is through how they view whiteness. And I started even thinking like there's a little bit of this need to sort of get as close as they can to it, you know, like but there's I don't know, there's like this conflict sort of like is talked about, I think, in what's his name, the guy.
Final.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I haven't figured out which passages I want to like specifically focus on, but the whole big thing being whiteness, shaping blackness,
Mhm.
and essentially whiteness is the thing that you're supposed to aspire to, or at least try to get close to. You can't actually attain it unless you're Pecola, but then you lose your mind.